So now, talking about the recommendation on these oils from Signature Series, XL, and OE oil, what I would tell you is this. The Signature Series oil is the most affordable oil of the oils that we make. And I can stand by that. People go, well, wait a minute. That's your most expensive oil. Well, the price you're talking about, or are you talking about the real cost? The price might be $10 a quart. The equivalent cost might be $2 a quart. Because if I run this oil for 25,000 miles, and I put the one filter on there, and I go to 25,000 miles, and I compare that to running 8 oil changes of 3,000 miles. Now, that means if I take my oil that costs $10, but it went 8 times as far, I have to divide it by 8. That means it's down to $1.25 a quart. How much is the petroleum? About $4 a quart. So I'd say it's the most affordable oil in the market. Now, if I back off to the XL and I run it 10,000, people would say, yeah, but that's less money. Well, but that's only 3 times the petroleum oil change if you're using 3,000 miles. So I take the price of that, which is, what is it, $7.85 a quart?
Yeah, it's about that.
And divided by 3, it's now $2.50. It costs twice as much as the Signature Series oil, because Signature Series oil was only $1.25 a quart equivalent. Then if I drop down to the OE oil, it's the most expensive stuff I sell.
Yeah.
Because I can only run it for 5,000 miles. So I don't even get 2 times out of it. So see what I'm saying? It is how you approach, how you use the things. Does it cost you more money to use a product that goes 4 or 5, 6 times as long as another product? You got to do the cost ratios. Cost is the issue, not price. What does it cost over time? And I want to remind everybody in here that that really remains our top-notch approach to selling synthetic oil, especially AMSOIL synthetic oil, is that it really does save money. Now, we look at the money that it saves, and we go to the next question. Well, yeah, but will it protect your engine? You know, just because you're saving money on this stuff, is it actually going to protect your engine? And then you look at every quality factor that can be measured. Everything that can be measured with a lubricant, and we find that AMSOIL synthetic oils are the #1 or #2 in some cases in every measurable category. If you look at, does it hold its viscosity? Yeah. You go, well, what's its temperature range? Well, -60 to 450. How's petroleum doing in that case? Well, it's cotton candy and it's smoke before it gets to either one of those limits. Oh, wow. That's not a very good competition. Well, how do you guys do compared to other synthetics? Well, ask the people in the business. They cringe every time AMSOIL comes out with an oil comparative testing brochure. I mean, they just cringe because they're afraid they'll be somewhere in that comparison. And it's usually not good if you're in the comparison in the AMSOIL pamphlet, because you don't turn out to do very well. Now, why is that? Do we think that'd be wonderful? AMSOIL must have the only smartest chemists and lubrication engineers in the country. They must have gone out of the country and went to a secret school somewhere in the Falkland Islands to learn this stuff, because it just must be that they know stuff other people don't. The answer to that is, of course not. They went to the same engineering schools, the same chemistry degrees that other people had. The difference happens to be in the guy who owns the company, Albert Amatuzio. And what his philosophy is, you make me the best quart of oil that you can make, and I'll figure out how to sell it. Now that's the exact opposite of the oil industry's philosophy for making oils.
Right.
If you look at most of the oil industry, what they say is, we're going to sell this oil in the marketplace for this price. You can spend this much to make a quart, not a dime more. Go make a quart of oil. And they do, and give them credit for those limits. They actually make a usable product. Let's be honest. There's millions of cars out there driving around petroleum oil, and they're not falling off in the ditch or blowing up every day. So they make a usable product for that limitation. But AMSOIL has had people out of different organizations, let's say, that have come to AMSOIL's convention and stuff that they have in Superior. And these guys would just lament to the AMSOIL guys, well, if our boss would let us spend any amount of money we needed to make a quart of oil, we could make that oil. But they don't have that option. So what happens is AMSOIL, and that's why AMSOIL continues this Signature Series oil, and that's why that's the oil for me, is because that oil is made from that philosophy. Now we'll have to admit that XL oil is made to an end purpose. 7,500 miles, less expensive.
10,000 miles.
Say again?
10,000 miles.
10,000 miles, yeah. And it is made for that intermediate level, and it's got a limit on it. So the boss has to say, look, we're going to have to be competitive in that oil. We have to limit the cost on it. We use some different ingredients and different things. We make a good corn oil. It is. XL's turned out to be a very good oil. But it pales in comparison to Signature Series oil. So that philosophy of you just make me the best quart of oil you can, and we'll go out and sell it. And guess what? AMSOIL's gone out and sold it. There are people sitting in this room, all of us. We know that AMSOIL's gone out and sold this oil because it has grown. The company has grown continuously for 20 years. Last 10 years, basically double-digit growth for over 10 years. This is a success story because of that quality factor. So what I encourage AMSOIL dealers to do is stand by your product, sell it on quality. Always start with the best we got, the Signature Series oil. If people want to go to one of the lesser quality of the oils, there's no problem with that. They're the customer, satisfy what they need. But we should be recommending the best that we have. I had somebody ask me about gear lubes, and they said, well, don't you make a less expensive gear lube? And I said, yeah, we do. If you want our ADW90 original gear lube, that's good gear lube. Be glad to sell it to you. Now, if you want my recommendation for your automotive application, our severe gear is the best one we make. And you're not going to change this gear lube maybe once in the life of your car, actually for most people. So you're going to, and it holds 2 quarts. So you're going to quibble over $2 a quart when I can tell you specifically that this one is just the perfect application for small differential high-speed ring and pinion gears and stuff on a car. You're going to quibble over $2. How much does this car cost? What do you think that rear end costs? You know, I don't know that people really know this, but we had a guy that blew out the rear end in a Dodge pickup, and he spent $1,400 to rebuild the rear end.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, that differential is a very extremely well manufactured set of gears. And in the world of mechanical engineering, it's actually a marvel. If you look in there at that ring gear and the pinion that goes on it, and how they have these curved teeth that mesh up perfectly, and there's no lash, and they're running. These things are marvels of modern machinery and the ability to make them. I just think about how they're made with these today, with these computer-controlled lathes, and how they cut all these incredibly perfect angles and curves. And if you look at that and you say to yourself, wow, well, what should I protect this with? Well, my answer is you should protect it with the best, because you won't mess with that more than usually once, maybe twice, in your entire time period that you own the vehicle. So don't go short on gear lube. And I don't even understand, to tell you this, I had one guy, one shop that I really appreciated, because that shop just told people, we do your differential, we put synthetic in it. If you don't want us to put synthetic in it, take it somewhere else. And the reason was, they just said the difference between these gear lubes is night and day. And we're going to use the good stuff and put it in there. The difference in the price ain't that much, and you should not go into this thing with the labor it takes to do it and not use the better product. And they never had anybody they had to run down the street, because that was a good firm recommendation, because they knew that was a better product. UPS, they use nothing but synthetic gear lubes from coast to coast. Okay, the reason is they got tired of having trailers laid up and trucks with broken differentials and that kind of stuff, and they use Mobil gear lubes. Now, what do we say about Mobil? We always say, hey, you're using a good product. We think we can compete, and in many cases beat their price. Come see us. But Mobil makes a good product. They do. They've got a good reputation, and they've got that account with UPS, and my My word to the wise on that is don't beat your head to a pulp trying to get that account, because you ain't gonna get it.
Tell me about it. I worked for him for 30 years.
Yeah,
And
and
that's exactly what you're gonna do, beat your head
beat
on
your
the
head
wall.
against the pulp. And the public truck fleet,
Yep.
it's Mobil oil. Mobil's got the whole thing.
Yep.
We had some dealers go to Publix and attempt to try to talk with them, and the guy finally went and got his sheet out and said, "This is what Mobil's charging me for this oil, what can you do?" And after they got the guy up for passing out, looking at what they were paying Mobil, because Mobil is the factory direct, they can afford to sell oil to fleets to make sure nobody else can touch it. They can give it to them if they want to keep that account. So just be reasonable. Don't go do silly things and beat your head against the wall where it doesn't do any good. But the point to be made is that these guys are using synthetic gear lubes and synthetic transmission oils. Toyota, I think everybody knows that here. Toyota, the car manufacturer Toyota, 2011, went bumper to bumper synthetic. Everything. Now, they're not going to be the last. There's many more coming in that direction.
BMW's there now.
Yeah, BMW, yeah, they use synthetics too.
They're there.
And Mercedes uses synthetics. There are several vehicles in the GM line that come with synthetics. If you want to achieve long life, better fuel economy, good cold weather and hot weather performance, extreme conditions, you use synthetic. So there can be arguments made by good people about whether or not they think it's economical, the way they view things, to use a synthetic oil. There's no legitimate argument about whether synthetic oil is superior to petroleum oil in its lubricating quality. It'd be as silly as arguing that radial tires are not superior to bias flat tires. It's just an argument that does not hold water. Or as they say in the South, that dog won't hunt. You know, it just has nowhere to go. So when you discuss synthetics with folks that you're talking to, what I advise you to do is just simply recommend the best products. I believe our Signature Series. Now look at the transmission fluid. Let's just talk about what we just hit there for a minute. I said transmission oil. There are no vehicles on the road today that would not benefit significantly from synthetic transmission fluid. There's just no way around it. I'm talking about an oil that doesn't even rise in thickness to the level of a 20-weight oil. And I'm going to put that in the transmission. It's an automatic transmission, but imagine this. It's in an automatic transmission in a Power Stroke Ford or a Cummins turbo diesel or a Duramax. Sit in that transmission. And I hook it up to my 3-axle, 6-horse trailer, and I just start down the road, loop-a-doop-a-doop, having a good time. The pressure and the strain on that transmission is immense, and the temperatures start to build up. I got less than a 20-weight oil in this thing. Just how much temperature do I think that lightweight oil can handle? In just a short period of time, it goes from it's around what they call a 10W weight. It's around a 6 on the viscosity scale. The next thing you know, it's 5, and it's 4, and pretty soon it ain't protecting anything, and it's starting to make vapor bubbles in the transmission. And what you got to realize inside that transmission, people think, I don't know what they think an automatic transmission is. It has real steel gears inside. Just like the ones when you take your manual transmission and shift it, you're moving steel gears. That automatic transmission is moving steel gears, and they're meshing, and you have bearings, and you have tremendous loads in this thing, and guess what's lubricating it? A 10W fluid. Now, if it's a synthetic fluid that can handle temperatures of 300 and, let's say, 25, 350 degrees without breaking down, then all of a sudden you have protection. But a petroleum 10W fluid at 220 degrees is just getting ready to head into the smoke bill. And how many times, you can ask guys that have a transmission temperature gauge. Oh, well, I was heading up that hill with my towing my fifth wheel RV, and man, we're hitting about 275, 280 degrees in that transmission. I was glad to get to the top. Well, if that's petroleum, you ain't getting to the top. And that's why they put all the coolers out front and do everything they can to cool this thing. But there comes a point at which that lightweight petroleum fluid, now, why I bring that up, Dextron 6 and Mercon SP fluids, the newest fluids for these wonderful vehicles. They are a lighter viscosity than the Mercon 5 and the Mercon and the Dexron 3. They even went lighter. They went from a 7.5 on the viscosity scale down to a 6. Now that you say, well, is that much? Well, considering that that's 1.5 units off of 7, I'd call that a 20% reduction in units of viscosity. And yet, they're putting that in vehicles that the latest torque ratios on these diesel pickups are almost insane. We're talking about, well, just trying to get a little power out of my truck, 700 foot-pounds of torque and 450 horsepower at the rear wheels, Yeah, that's if the drivetrain can get it to the rear wheels without blowing out the sides of the truck, So really, you've got tremendous pressures, and the synthetic transmission fluid is absolutely a lifesaver. One example on that, and I'll move on to something else, is that Allison makes many heavy-duty transmissions. They're considered to be probably the premium transmission manufacturer in the country. Allison offers an extended warranty on their transmissions, all the way from Class 8 trucks down to Duramax pickups, okay? They offer an extended warranty. And here's how it works. Oh, you want our extended warranty? You just bought the truck? Okay. Not only do you have to pay for it, but you have to bring your truck in, and we're going to flush out all of your transmission fluid, and we're going to put in a synthetic transmission fluid that meets a certain, it's called a technical engineering spec, TES. I think it's not 295 anymore. It's got a different number, but it used to be 295. Now it's got a different number. But anyway, that spec calls for a synthetic transmission fluid. But here I'll bring up something that's a little odd. It calls for one that has a specific base stock, a PAO synthetic transmission fluid. Now we can get into that later about the cheap imitations, but the point is, when Allison says, we're going to extend this warranty for you, the first thing they want to cover themselves is that you have put the synthetic transmission fluid that meets the spec they call for to guarantee that transmission is going to be able to take the stress and the strain, and then they're not going to have to pay anything in a car.
You have to actually change it at 52.
Yeah.
You got to go to 50 and change it to get to 100.
Right. And so what we got is that this big transmission company, which is the most respectable one in the country, requires synthetic transmission fluid if their money's on the line. I think that's about as good a testimony as you can get for the quality of synthetic transmission fluid. When the guys that really, really have to put their money forward and make these transmissions say, no, 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 put the synthetic in if you want the warranty, that's a pretty good testimony. And the AMSOIL transmission fluids, the multi-vehicle transmission fluid actually meets that TES spec. And we have one called Torque Drive, which is designed to match up with another company's transmission fluid. But the original AMSOIL, and there's a reason for that, which if I got into all the technicalities, I don't need to, but it actually meets the spec. For a period, it didn't, because our low viscosity transmission fluid doesn't meet the spec. It has to do with the viscosity. But when our multi-vehicle fluid went back up to a certain level, when we broke out the low viscosity transmission fluid, it allowed that original transmission fluid to meet that TES spec for Allison transmissions.